Tara, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine. Well, first of all, thank you for lending me a little bit of your time. I know that you're training and every second counts. I think the pandemic made it clear for us. So thank you very much, first of all. This will be just a regular chat, talking a little bit about you, your history, your experience, Nordic combined, what we all know that it won't be on the Olympics. But first of all, I would like to understand how, because I read it a lot and it's difficult to understand. How, since you were a little girl, you wanted and you were keen on doing on practicing Nordic combined, even though there weren't any World Cups, there weren't any Olympics for you. What was the thing about Nordic combined that kept you hooked from the first minute?
So I grew up in a really small town and we got a lot of snow and I did so many winter sports and skiing was such a huge part of my life. And part of that was cross-country skiing and ski jumping. And as a little kid, I didn't think about the Olympics. I didn't think about World Cups. I didn't even really think about racing. I just realized I really loved to do both cross-country skiing and ski jumping. And those are the two sports that make up the one sport of Nordic combined. So gradually I developed as a skier and grew up and did start competing. And as I got older, I realized that actually girls aren't allowed to do this, which is pretty incredible in this day and age that women are still not allowed to do certain sports.
And you had a pretty interesting sports background. You had your mom that was a runner, and I think in the mountains. You had your father being an alpine skier. Was there any influence from any of them? Was it your choice to be on a winter sport? Was your father a pretty big part of you while growing up, while training, or was it just by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, again, I was from a small town. My entertainment was sports, and what our family did together was sports. My mom, growing up, she was an outdoor educator, and she led canoe trips and really just lived outside. And some of my earliest memories were of, being on trips that she was leading or being by a lake while she was teaching canoeing. So sports were always, how she made a living. Honestly, she worked in a lot of sports shops selling equipment or working on equipment, and I just kind of breathed sports, whether it was mountain biking or running or canoeing or skiing. And I think because of that, because I was exposed so young, I didn't really even realize how much I loved sports, because it was just kind of like reading. If you're around books, you just pick it up and do it. And yeah, I'm really thankful to have such a strong mother who introduced me. I think that was really pivotal in my childhood. And she was so supportive. I mean, she took me to races. She drove long hours through snowstorms to get me to competitions when she realized how much I loved them. So yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to my mother. My father was not really a stable personality and wasn't really there for me as much, but he was an amazing athlete in his own right. And I think even though we don't have a good relationship now, I think that is one of the things that he gave me.
Were you the only one in that small town that started doing winter sports, or were there any other girls, any friends that joined you?
In my small town, I was the only child who really, really loved skiing to the extent I did, but there were some other kids in my area, and I was lucky enough to be on a junior ski club sports team, and we would get together after school for, I don't know, an hour twice a week and just ski together and have fun. And again, it wasn't really about competing. It was just about, being outside and being happy and healthy and enjoying each other's company.
And it's also a really fun sport, but as well, a lot of risk that you have to face within the sports, even a lot of winter sports as well, but mostly ski jumping. And while everything was just fun, nothing to compete, nothing like too serious, how did you start to, let's call it, defeat that kind of fear? How did you encourage yourself to start jumping, or were you like fearless from the start?
Well, I'm told that when I was little, I was quite a wild child. I was the kind of kid who was always jumping off things and testing limits anyway. So I think my mom was just really, really happy that she could take me to ski jumping practice and someone else would like supervise me while I did something and she could have a break because I was so full of energy. And sometimes that wasn't necessarily like focused on good things all the time as a really little kid. And I think that this was a way for me to focus some of my wild energy or risk-taking energy in a really positive way.
And when did you realize that you were, I mean, besides fun, you had something inside you, you were skillful to the level of, okay, start competing, taking it a little bit more serious? When did you realize that you had what it takes to be, I don't know if the greatest one, but at least to compete and maybe live from ski jumping and then Nordic combined?
Well, in the eastern part of the US, there was like kind of a younger junior circuit, I would say. And there was maybe one competition a month and usually it was a pretty long drive. But throughout the years, I kind of did more and more of them. And there's usually 5 or 6 over the winter. And I was actually really lucky in that I had a couple of young women about my own age, of girls my own age, and we would compete together. And I ended up being on the World Cup with one of those women, and we just really enjoyed competing. And I don't really think that we realized how good we were. And I think honestly, some young men and some young women quit the sport because we beat them by so much, and no one thought we were very special. I think I come from a part in the world, like in New England and the US, like you never brag about how good you are. You never, like no one ever told me I was good. They just told me that I needed to work harder and like be nice to my parents and nice to my friends. Like the culture that I was from, like even when I got a little bit older and won my first junior nationals or came in third in a junior national cross country race, everyone was just like, oh, that's really great, like good for you. But my coach just told me that I could do better and I would have to work really hard to stay this good. And no one really made a big deal over it. Like I was really proud, and I knew my mom was really proud, and my friends thought it was really great, but I never was led to believe that I was special or anything super great. So I think I still kind of carry that with me. I mean, I don't think I am very special. I think I work really hard and, um, you know, focus on the details of my sport, and really just try to do the best I can every day. And sometimes I have success, but a lot of times I don't. And I've just been lucky to have my hard work pay off at the right moments.
Was that a big part of your actual mindset, like being told from the get-go, okay, you need to work hard, you need to be better, you need to improve, to this point of you saying, okay, I'm the greatest athlete of women's Nordic combined, and I'm still trying to figure out where I need to progress, where I can improve this, where I can improve that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky in the fact that I competed in both cross-country skiing and ski jumping independently from such a young age. And because I did have success in both sports, I continued to do both sports. So that gave me a big advantage in the Nordic combined world because a lot of the competitors came to one side of the sport later, and I did both sides of the sport from a very young age. But yeah, no, I mean, I know that I could have been way better at Nordic combined. There's always things to improve. And honestly, that's what I focus on. Like I never go into a competition thinking I win it. Like I know there's many sports psychologists that tell me to be more confident in my abilities. But for me, like finding aspects of my technique that I need to improve or endurance that I need to improve, it just, I just enjoy the hard work, and I enjoy sort of the artistry of focusing on all the little details in sport. And for me, it's just something I take a lot of joy out of. And if I get it right one day and I'm able to be the best that day, it's an amazing experience and so rewarding. But I know that even if I win 3 races, you know, the next race is going to be just as hard, and I'll need to focus just as much.
Mentioned sports psychologist, and with Naomi Osaka's case last year, it was a conversation worldwide about mental health. How do you deal with being at the top of the table and knowing that everyone wants to beat you? I mean, how do you deal with that, and with needing to give your 100%, because if not, someone's going to take your spot, and then and everyone wants your spot. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a new feeling to be at the top and having everyone looking at me and trying to beat me. But I just tried to separate myself from that and realize that winning doesn't make you a different person. It doesn't even make you a better athlete. So I tried to leave all my successes and failures in the past and just start every new day fresh, and just pick things to work on and do the best I could and be okay with that. You know, having those successes in the past was nice and gave me comfort that, okay, if I fail today, I'm not going to get kicked off the team. Like, I'm not going to get sent home because I'm successful. So yeah, using the success to give me confidence on that level, but also just trying to be in the moment, really. I just tried to focus on the moment and enjoying competition and enjoying, you know, the place I was in and the opportunity I had to compete, and the fact that I was healthy and strong, and just not think about the results as much, but just think about the process.
And talking about mental health, what's the approach in the US about mental health, sports psychologists? Is it something that is just normal? Is it something that it's still not very well seen in the sports world? How is that at US level?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I'll speak for my experience and the team that I was on. We didn't have a sports psych that I had really access to on a regular basis. And I didn't really have any help. And I think that while I personally really enjoy competition and really enjoy being on the road and loving the skiing life, actually some of the issues around you know, gender equality and media and stuff like that, that's more what I needed help with in terms of mental health support. And I didn't have any. And when you're told as an athlete, the way I was, that you're not good enough to be in the Olympic Games because you're a woman, or because you're a woman, you aren't allowed to compete in as many competitions, or because you're a woman, you're not allowed to be paid like just a living wage, even if you're winning every single competition, that started to undermine, you know, my self-confidence in a way that I didn't even realize. Basically, being a second-class citizen in the sport that I was doing, even though I was best in the world, really started to eat away at who I was. And I found myself just being angry all the time. And I'm not an angry person. I'm a really happy person. And that was a really strange feeling for me. So now that I have retired, I do have a sports psych, and I've been able to talk through some of these feelings I have. But in the moment, I just honestly tried to ignore them, because mental health certainly wasn't really talked about on our team. And I think in the US overall, it definitely is becoming more of an issue that people have heard about, that people know about. But that doesn't necessarily mean that top level athletes have amazing support or any support at all.
And also, you had to fight for equal funding, or at least to the federation to change the criteria, because you, as women, you don't have a World Cup, or you don't have the Olympics, and the criteria for an A-team status was, okay, win an Olympic medal or win a World Cup medal. And because of your fight, and thanks to your fight, at least now women can at least aim for a A-team criteria and get the funding they need. Was it enough? Do you think there are, at least at the US Federation level, think there are more changes that need to be done only in the US? Then we'll talk about the Olympics and the World Cup.
Yeah, I think on the US, we're still really far behind other nations right now in terms of support both the men and women get, but for sure the women get. It was good to see some big steps being made, but there's so many more steps that need to be made. And part of the reason I retired is I knew with the support that I could receive in the US, it was gonna be almost impossible for me to stay on the top of the podium. And it's sort of like if you're the best race car driver in the world, but you don't have a good car. Like, I love to fight and I love to struggle, and I understand that in the sports world, nothing is given for free. But if you don't have a car to drive, like, how are you supposed to win a race as a race car driver? Like, if you don't have a good team behind you as a skier, how are you supposed to compete to be the best in the world? Sure, I could compete to be top 10 in the world. I could compete to be top 15, but that would just be considered a failure if I did anything less than win. And even if I didn't consider it a failure, like, for example, at World Championships, when I came in 5th place, I was incredibly proud of that 5th place, but most people in the media and who didn't know me just automatically viewed it as a failure because it was the first time I had ever been off a podium ever in my entire Nordic combined career.
When was the moment that you took the decision?
Honestly, like, over the winter, when I sort of experienced the level of support that I was getting on the World Cup, my decision slowly came to me. And throughout the winter, I was trying to come up with solutions to stay in Nordic combined and trying to find possible funding and possible sponsors and possible private coaches who have, you know, previous experience of coaching high-level Nordic combined athletes, or just had really good education in terms of coaching skiing in general. You know, a lot of the coaches in the US, they've never been to school for coaching at all. You know, they've been to school for things like urban planning or, you know, architecture or like accounting. Like, they actually don't have any formal education in skiing. So I knew that with the tools I had, I would either need to retire or find, you know, better coaching, better equipment, better wax techs, better training bases. And I knew that I couldn't do that in a year. And I don't know if those opportunities will become available to me in the future, but in biathlon, I did have the resources I needed to improve. And I do have the resources I need to reach my potential as a biathlete. And that's really, really exciting for me, because at the end of the day, I'm a skier and I grew up doing all kinds of sports in a really small town. And the fact that I get to travel around the world is an incredible honor. And it doesn't really matter what kind of skis I have on my feet to me. Representing my country and having the honor to travel and see the world and meet amazing people is really incredible.
And you had a 4-year period when you were younger that you took biathlon in the junior national team, and then you returned to Nordic combined. Do you think, or do you have a still hope that maybe in the future, maybe 2026 or 2030, Nordic combined will be part of the Olympic program? If that happens, will you at least consider the option to return to Nordic combined, or would you stay to the safe one, to biathlon?
Yeah, I mean, there is a big possibility that women's Nordic combined could get into the next Olympics. A lot of people are positive about the future of women's Nordic combined. However, I also know that women's ski jumping took a long time to get into the Olympics. And a lot of people thought women's ski jumping would get into the Olympics a lot sooner than it did. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of Nordic combined. I certainly hope for it, and I've been working with FIS and the IOC and writing letters to them and helping to encourage them to add it to the games and advocating for that decision, even though I'm no longer doing Nordic combined, and I am hoping for the best. If it does get included in the games, I would definitely consider it, but a lot of the same issues for me personally would remain of not that much funding, not that much support. And of course it is an extreme sport and I would be 32. I think a lot of people think that's old for a ski jumper. At the same time, you have Olympians like Simone Amman, who is going to his 7th Olympics. So it really depends on the individual, whether 32 would be too old for the games.
Yeah, because before you retire from Nordic combined, you said that I know that the Nordic combined will be on the Olympics. I don't know when. And you said that if it was in 2026 or in 2030, you would be past your prime, but that either way you would still enjoy it. Do you still consider this after your retirement?
Yes, I do. I guess it's like this. If I can continue with biathlon and have a good shot at making the Olympics in biathlon in 2026, I think that I would stay with biathlon. I mean, I have to stay with the people who support me and give me what I need to be an elite athlete. And I owe that to the biathlon world. And I would genuinely enjoy going to the Olympics as a biathlete. But biathlon is an incredibly tough sport, and I'm not at a World Cup level yet. So, the future is unwritten. And what I know about sports is you never really know the answers until they're in the present. And that's one of the really exciting things about sport. I could try to go to the Olympics for biathlon. I could try to go to the Olympics for Nordic combined. Both are a distinct possibility, but I really won't know until we get closer to the Olympics.
Was it easier for you to take up biathlon instead of any other winter sport, considering your previous experience?
Yeah, I did 4 years of biathlon as a junior athlete, and I had some success. But again, as a junior athlete at that point in time, I didn't have a lot of time close to the shooting range. We didn't have a shooting range close to my house, so I didn't get that much shooting time. So it was always kind of a struggle to have good performances in shooting. And now there's a shooting range 10 minutes from my house, and I'm able to train almost every day, and my skiing is at a good level. So biathlon was the best choice for me. And also, if I do want to return to Nordic combined, I need to keep my skiing fast and stay strong. I can't retire from athletics completely. So I think this was a smart decision, and also one that I genuinely take joy from.
And before retiring from Nordic combined, you were at the 2020 Youth Olympics, and you saw the first Nordic combined at an Olympics. What was the overall feeling? I mean, how would you rate the experience and watching the girls for the first time in an Olympic game, giving it all for a gold medal?
Being at the Youth Olympics was a very amazing experience, and I was incredibly honored to be given that position. I think that advocating for gender equality can be a pretty thankless job. I've definitely taken a lot of heat for it, and progress is slow. It doesn't mean that I'm not proud of the progress that we've made, but it is quite slow. So to be at the games and see a big step towards gender equality and see a real step in reality towards gender equality was an amazing gift. It's sort of like getting your diploma after you've completed a university degree. You realize all that hard work was for something and went into something, and to see the young women enjoy that experience. And some of them were not aware of all the hard work and hours that had gone into giving them this opportunity. And that almost made it better, because they grew up in a world where they weren't denied opportunity just because they were women, and that made me really happy.
Do you see that this difference between, let's call it, your generation and this upcoming generation? Do you see someone outstanding, like that has the same fighting spirit as you to keep fighting for women's Nordic combined in the future?
Well, I mean, hopefully there won't need to be a second generation of athletes like me to fight for the progression in women's sports. I think right now, most of the young women competing are satisfied with the level of opportunity open to them. And it will be interesting to see whether the opportunities open to them expand accordingly with the development of the sport, or whether in 10 years we have the same number of competitions, the same amount of prize money, and are not in the Olympics. And in that case, I'm sure that there will be young women who step up and advocate for the sport. To be a Nordic combiner, you have to be incredibly strong and incredibly smart and be a very well-rounded athlete. And that those types of personality traits lend themselves to being a very good advocate for the sport if they need to be. But hopefully there won't need to be another generation of people like me.
And just last few questions so I can set you free. Where does the USA today rank among the other nations in women's biathlon? I mean, of course, you have Italy, you have Norway. I think the Russians are good as well. But where does the USA female team stand today?
Oof. I think this data would actually be available on the Biathlon World website, but I believe that the US is right around Estonia in like 13th, I think. Don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly, but we are a small biathlon nation in terms of people that watch the sport and people that do the sport, but we have had amazing successes. Like Susan Dunkley got a medal at World Championships, and Lowell Bailey won a World Championships. So I think that we have a huge amount of potential, and we have the pieces we need to achieve the medals on a world stage. And I'm really excited to work hard and hopefully be one of those athletes in a couple of years.
The last question, but not question, but I always finish these interviews letting the athlete give any message they want. If you have someone you want to thank, anything you want to say, these are your seconds for you to say whatever you want.
I definitely want to thank all the people that supported me throughout my career that weren't necessarily supposed to support me. So the friends and family that helped me, pay for plane tickets when I was a junior athlete, or, relatives who stepped in and supported me when maybe I didn't have the support I needed. And so many people who maybe don't know Nordic combined, who cheer for me just because of what I represented as a Nordic combiner, fighting for gender equality and advocating for women in sports. So a huge thank you to everyone who follows my story. I think I'd like to just put out there into the world that I would encourage people to follow their passion, even if it's really hard or they think that maybe it's not possible. Because even if you don't achieve your final dream, the path and the experiences you'll have on the way will be truly amazing. And the passion that you have for fighting for your dream will enable you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do if it wasn't your passion.